Hey everyone, welcome back. Today we're diving into some really fascinating minds from the Renaissance. Thomas More, Francis Bacon, and Tommaso Campanella. Now these guys weren't just daydreaming about perfect worlds. No, they drew up incredibly detailed blueprints for them. Blueprints that, even today, totally challenge how we think about society, leadership, and, well, what it even means to be human.
All right, so here's the plan. First, we'll unpack what utopia actually means. Then we'll get into Thomas More and his society without property. After that, Francis Bacon's world ruled by science. And we'll wrap up the thinkers with Campanella's wild City of the Sun. Finally, we'll bring it all together and ask what these three big dreams really tell us.
Okay, Section 1. Utopia, the quest for a perfect society. The word itself tells you a lot. It's from the Greek topos, which literally means no place.
So the guy who actually came up with the word was Thomas More, way back in 1516. And it's just brilliant because it captures the whole point. See, these utopias, they're not just fairy tales. They're actually powerful critiques of the real world. By showing us this fictional perfect no place, they're holding up a mirror to our own societies and forcing us to ask a really uncomfortable question. Why can't things be better here?
Which brings us right to our first thinker, Thomas More, the man who literally named the genre. His book, Utopia, was an absolute game changer. But look, to really get what More was trying to do, you have to picture the England he was living in. It was a time of huge, chaotic change, and he looked around and saw a society that was, well, deeply sick. So what was the sickness? Well, for More, it was dead simple. You had a tiny, wealthy elite who did nothing, living off the backs of a massive, poor majority who were being pushed into crime and desperation just to survive. He was seeing this thing called the enclosure movement, where rich landowners were kicking peasants off common land to graze sheep. To him, this wasn't just bad economics, it was a moral cancer. And his cure? It was radical. Just get rid of private property, the whole thing, for good.
So what does this society without property actually look like? Well, first off, everything is shared. Everything. And get this, the workday is only 6 hours long. The rest of your time is for you, to study science, to create art, to better yourself. There's no money. If you need something, you just go to a communal storehouse and get it. But it's not chaos. Oh no. The whole society is run by wise, elected elders. And there's a catch, a pretty big one. You have to believe in God to even be a part of public life.
And this right here, this quote, just perfectly sums up his idea of leadership. You got to remember, he's writing at a time when kings claimed absolute power from God. More throws that whole idea out the window. For him, a king isn't a master, he's a father. His one and only job, his sacred duty, is to put his people's happiness above his own, always.
So let's be really clear about what this means. According to More, if you're a leader living in some lavish palace while your people are suffering, you're not a king, you're not a ruler. You're basically just a jailer. That's it. The only real measure of your success as a leader is the well-being of the people you're supposed to be serving.
All right, let's switch gears completely. Now we're on to Francis Bacon and the sovereignty of science. See, if More's utopia was all about social justice, Bacon's is built on something totally different: knowledge. You've all heard this quote, right? Knowledge is power. Well, this little phrase is the master key to everything Bacon believed, and it's the foundation of his ideal society, the new Atlantis. For him, the greatest power in the universe wasn't religion or the king's decree, it was science. It was understanding how the world actually works. To know is to rule.
So Bacon imagines this secret island called Bensalem. And on this island, the most important building, the center of their whole society, isn't a palace or a cathedral. It's a place called Solomon's House. And what is that? It's basically a massive state-funded research lab. Think of it like the ancestor of every modern university and scientific institute. Their entire mission is to just discover things, to figure out the secrets of the universe for the good of humanity.
Now, Bacon doesn't go on and on about the politics of the place, but he's clear on what the leader is like. He's not a conqueror or a lawmaker in the traditional sense. He's a patron of science. His whole job, really, is to be a visionary who funds research, who champions discovery, and who makes sure all that new knowledge is used to improve people's lives. His power comes from his commitment to progress.
Okay, on to our final thinker, Tommaso Campanella and his City of the Sun. And wow, if you thought the others were out there.
Campanella takes More's ideas about communal living and Bacon's focus on science and smashes them together into something, well, something incredibly radical and intensely structured. Campanella's diagnosis of society's problems was pretty stark. He thought all our evils come from selfishness. And where does selfishness come from? He said two places: private property and the family. So his solution? Get rid of both. Not just property, but the entire concept of a private family. In the City of the Sun, everything is shared. Your house, your food, even who you have children with. Yeah, the state actually manages relationships to try and breed the best citizens.
And the government? It's a super rigid top-down hierarchy. At the very peak, you have the supreme leader, known as the metaphysician. He's basically a philosopher king priest all rolled into one. And under him, you have three ministers: power, who's in charge of the military; wisdom, who runs the sciences; and love, who, and this is wild, manages reproduction and education.
Which leads to a pretty obvious and frankly terrifying question, right? Who on earth could possibly be qualified to have that much power? I mean, we're talking about total control over every single part of a person's life.
Well, Campanella's answer is basically nobody real. The job requirements for the metaphysician are absolutely impossible. This person has to have a complete mastery of every single science. They need to be an expert in theology, metaphysics, history, law, for all nations. They have to be a master of math and astrology. It's not a job for a person, it's a job for a god. It's a list of qualifications no actual human could ever meet.
But here's the logic, and it's absolutely crucial to understanding his whole system. Campanella believed that if someone actually did have that level of perfect, complete knowledge, they would be physically incapable of being evil. To him, true wisdom and true virtue were the same thing. A leader that smart, he argued, just couldn't be cruel or tyrannical. His knowledge would literally force him to be just.
All right, let's step back and put it all together. Three incredible dreams, but they all lead to one very real question for us today. So here's a quick cheat sheet to keep them straight. You've got Thomas More, all about social justice, run by wise elders. Then there's Francis Bacon, who's obsessed with scientific progress under a benevolent king. And finally, Tommaso Campanella, who's pushing for a state based on pure philosophical rule, led by that all-knowing philosopher priest. You can see they're all aiming for perfection, but they're taking completely different roads to get there. And that leaves us with the big final question, and it's a heavy one. When you look at these perfect societies with their total lack of privacy, their state-controlled lives, their all-powerful leaders, what do you see? Are they inspiring visions of a better future we should strive for? Or are they actually the first drafts of totalitarian nightmares, where the individual is just completely crushed for the so-called greater good? That's the legacy of these thinkers, and it's a question we're still wrestling with today.